We're continuing on in the laws of Rosh Hashanah, and the next siman we have is Tavkuf Pei Gimel, Devardim Shenagim Lechal Rosh Hashanah, things that we should eat on Rosh Hashanah, Uvay Ches Ifim, and it's going to have 8 Ifim in it. And this is continuing similar to the theme of what we discussed in a few of the Sifim in last siman, is that on Rosh Hashanah, just like we're very concerned about exactly what we say and what words we say, even if we mean one thing, but it might sound like something bad. So similarly on Rosh Hashanah with our foods, you're going to see we're very careful about what we do eat, what we don't eat, what it represents, because we want to make sure that for the coming year, we're setting everything perfectly into motion to have, God willing, a good year. So let's start with the first siman, Aleph. Yehei Adam Ragi Lecho B'Rosh Hashanah. It's customary on Rosh Hashanah to eat the following things. So we're going to have a list of stuff we should eat. Karti, leeks. Silka, Dahainu Tradin, that's beets. Tamre, that's dates. Karda, squash. Rubia, Dahainu Tilta, this is fenugreek. Vuhu Adin, Mash, and Nikre, B'Lashonas Acherim, Lashon Riboy, Yechu Ko Anshe Medina, Medina Kil Shoinam. And so not just these foods which are from the times of the Gemara, but also any food that the word means something like increasing or prosperity in your language, you can also eat depending on where you live. For example, it's customary in Lubavitch to eat carrots. Why? Because in Yiddish, carrot is meren, which also implies to increase. So you can, I guess you can have a lot of fun with this, and maybe someone is going to have, like a celery, because in English, right, you want a bigger salary. It's a bad dad joke, I guess. And if you're going to eat the rubia, if you're going to eat the fenugreek, or something like that, Yaimar, what are you going to say? So what you do is there's a yihiratzon, a little tefillah you make that has a play on the words. So just like the word rubia is fenugreek, sheyirbu means to increase. So you're saying that Hashem should increase our zechu yesenu, should increase our merits. Karti, when someone's eating leeks, Yaimar yihiratzon mefenecha sheyikarsu soinenu. So why do we eat leeks? Because the word is karti, and karti sounds like sheyikarsu or kares, to cut off. So we're saying that it should be Hashem's will that He cuts off our enemies. Silka. So when someone's eating beets, the word silka for beets, Yaimar, they should say yihiratzon mefenecha sheyistalku oivenu. Again, the word silka, which means beets, is very similar to the word yistalku, which means to remove or to withdraw. And we're asking Hashem that it should be your will that you remove our oivenu, that you remove those who basically those who go against us, our foes. Tamre, when you eat dates. So what is the word date similar to? Yaimar, you should say yitamu soinenu. You're saying that Hashem, you should make perish those who hate us. When you eat kara, when you're eating squash, yaimar, so what's the word kara? Squash, similar to sheyikar, that you should rip up. Kara is like similar to kara for the squash. Sheyikar, that you should rip up gizar dinenu, any negative or bad decrees against us. But here we actually get a second one, and you add in the yiratzain, sheyikaru lefenecha zechu yaseinu, and you should read before your presence our merits, our zechuyas, because the word kriya, or sheikaru, that you should read is similar to the word kara for squash. So we got 2 for squash. Sheikara dinenu, to rip up the bad decrees, but yikaru, then you should read or call out lefenecha zechuyasenu, our merits. The yesh naigim, and it's also customary among some people, le'echol tepuach masoich metubo b'dvash, to eat a sweet apple dipped in honey. Now it's interesting, the Alter Rebbe is hearing the yesh naigim, that some people have the custom, and this is so universal that even people who aren't that religious yet, this is the one custom maybe they keep on Rosh Hashanah, is eating an apple dipped in honey. And here it's brought as a yesh naigim, that maybe some people have the custom, but it is very much customary to do so. You should eat le'echol tepuach metubo dvash, you should dip the sweet apple into the honey. V'oimrim shesachadeish aleinu shana mesuka, that Hashem should renew for us a year that is sweet. V'yevarech al tepuach v'lo al dvash, and you're going to make a bracha on the apple and not on the honey. Why? Lefisha dvash hu tafel tepuch, because the honey is secondary, it's tafel to the apple, and that's in basic laws of brachas. So a few comments on this. First off, it's not necessarily the Chabad custom to have any of those things we spoke about before, the karti, the silka, the tamar, the karta, rabuya, etc. It is customary to have the carrots, and it is customary by us to have the apples and honey. Now, when do you eat the apples and honey? So our custom is we do it after we make hamaitzi. So you can have kiddush on Rosh Hashanah, then you're going to have hamaitzi, and then you have the apple dipped in honey. And you'll notice also the lashon here that the Alter Rebbe has in the Shulchan Aruch is not what we have in the Siddur. In the Siddur, we say she'tachadesh aleinu shana tova umesuka. So it's a little different, and we have it as a yehir ratzain. Here he doesn't have yehir ratzain either because it's just like a shortened text where he applies not. But either way, in the Siddur, we definitely have the yehir ratzain part of it. And the order there is that you're going to make a bracha on the apple after it's dipped in, and we're going to see how this plays in a few halachas, and we'll get back to this. Then you're going to say the Hirat outside, and then you're going to eat the apple and the honey. But we're going to get back to that in a couple sifim. So let's go back to the text. The Beis, yesh eichlim dagim lifreis, v'lirbos kadagim. Some people have the custom to eat fish. Why? Because fish are fruitful and they multiply and they're plentiful, and we want to be the same way. But it's important not to cook the fish in vinegar. It was common, I guess, back in the day that fish, I think it's a preservative, was very often preserved or cooked in vinegar ahead of time. And nowadays we have similar things like with herrings and things like that. But nonetheless, this is the source then of the law that you should not have things like vinegar or things that are very bitter on Rosh Hashanah. Again, why? Because we want to have sweet year, not a bitter year. Gimel. Kil haiminim shetzarich levarech kisheoichlim b'seich hasuda kigain tapuchim usamardim yomer habakasha achar haschalas hachila. So all these various what we call simanim, all these fruits, whether it's the apple and the honey or the dates, etc. What do we do with them in terms of brachas, and when do we eat them? Well, we're going to eat them during the mealtime, which implies after hamaitzi. But we're going to make the bakasha, make the hirat, and make those statements after they're eaten a little bit. Why? Because that would imply that you're making an interruption, a hefsek, between the bracha and eating it. So normally, while we eat it after hamaitzi, while we eat it the suda, you're not making separate brachas on, right? You have your chicken soup, then you have you can have your salads, but you're not making a separate bracha on every piece there. Why? Because it's all part of your suda. However, when we're eating the apples and honey, if you're eating dates, any of the other simanim, that's not part of your meal. You're eating it because it's a special siman for Rosh Hashanah. Therefore, you have to make separate brachas. So, for example, in the case of apple and honey, after you make hamaitzi, now you have to make another bracha on the apple and honey because it's not part of the suda, it's not part of the meal per se. So the question is, when are you going to say the hirat sign? Do you say it before everything? Do you say it after? So the implication from Shulchan Aruch here is that you have to say the bracha, then you're going to eat a little bit, and then you say the hirat sign after because you don't want to make an interruption between the bracha and eating the food. However, in Sefer Minhagim, the Rebbe has a long letter where he explains why our custom is to say the bracha, you say the hirat sign immediately after, and then you eat it. And the reason it's not an interruption is because the hirat sign is, so to say, the entire reason we're eating the food. So it's almost secondary to the bracha. In other words, the very fact that we're making a bracha proves that the apple is not a regular part of the meal. We're eating it only because we want it as a siman. So the hirat sign is really an extension of the bracha, and it's connected to the reason why we eat it, so it's not considered an interruption. Daled, v'yesh naigim litbo perusas hamaitzi bedvash. There are those who have the custom to dip a piece of their challah, the hamaitzi, in the honey, and indeed that is our custom, and we do that all the way through Hashanah Rabbah. V'yesh eichlim remainim. There's those who are customary to eat pomegranate, and that is also our custom. V'aimrim nar bezechuyas karimain, and we say here that Hashem should increase our merits like a rimain, which has a lot of seeds. Now, it's not our custom. The only yihiratzain we say is the one on the apples and honey. We should eat fatty meats. You should drink honey. I mean, that's a tough one. I don't know if maybe nowadays like Coca-Cola counts. And we're eating all these things. Why? Because we want the year to be shamin. We don't need it to be fat, but we need it to be plentiful. And Masuka, we want it to be sweet. V'chein kasuv Ezra, and it says in Ezra, actually it says in Sefer Nehemiah, but it's considered like the same Sefer. Ichu mashmanim ushasu mamsakim, that we should eat the fatty foods and we should drink sweet drinks. Hey, yesh lachol reish ayo. It's customary to eat the head of a ram. Why? Zecher le'eloi shel Yitzchak, to remember the ram that was killed and sacrificed instead of Yitzchak Avinu. So that's if you're having people over, you have a Chabad house, and you're having people over who haven't celebrated Rosh Hashanah before, maybe. I mean, having that head of a ram is really going to get their attention. The im ein reish ayon. If you don't have the head of a ram, if you weren't able to get one at your local supermarket, yeichol reish keves. Okay, that's fine. Eat the head of a lamb. I mean, that's much easier. That'll go over better. The im ein reish keves. And if you don't have the head of a lamb, yeichol reish acher. Eat the head of another animal. And this is actually where then, if you remember, we mentioned eating fish. So here we kind of get 2 for 1. So our custom is to eat the head of a fish. So you're getting the benefit of the siman, the sign of eating a fish, which is plentiful, and also the idea of a reish. And then laimar niha l'reish v'zanav. So this is, so to say, it's not necessarily hiratzain that you make, but the allusion for why head is that you should be a head and not a tail. You want to be a leader. Now, the Rebbe points out that not everyone is meant to be the leader. Right? Everyone has different attributes, everyone has different strengths. Some people are not meant to be the leader. So how could you say that we want everyone to be the leader, right? This is going to be a very tough crowd if everyone is the boss. So if you look at the exact lashon of the Alter Rebbe, he says, Niyeh li'reish v'lizanav. There's a lamed there. Lamed means to, or connected to. So it's to say that, not everyone could be a leader, but you should be li'reish. You should connect yourself to the reish, to the tzaddikim, to the nasi hadar, as opposed to lizanav, as opposed to people who aren't the leader. Back in the text, the Vav, Yesh medaktim sheloi le'echol agoizim ve'luzim perish agoizim katanim. There's those who are careful to not eat agoiz, which is nuts, but specifically walnuts, ve'luzim, which is similar to small walnuts, but like a hazelnut. B'nei shehem marbim kicha v'niya. Why? Because they're going to increase your phlegm, the mucus, umevatim matfila, and it's really going to mess up your davening. It's a hard to daven when you're full of phlegm and mucus. Now, in this siman, that kind of ends discussing the food part of it. So now we're going to have a few other customs that we have during Rosh Hashanah. Zayim, v'naigim leilech el hanar. It's customary to go to a river, sheyesh bo dagim chayim, that has live fish in it. Well, and the reason for this is l'simin sheloi tishod banu ayin hara v'nirpa v'nirbe kedagim. And this is a sign that the ayin hara has no power over us, and that we should be, again, fruitful and plentiful like the fish. The Alter Rebbe points out in the Siddur that fish, if you ever had a fish tank, you'll see this, that their eyes are always open. They don't have, I think, an eyelid. So just like Hashem's eye is always open, is always watching us, then for sure we don't have to worry about, an evil eye or anything the opposite, because when you have the Eibishter's eye, Hashem's eye on us, there's nothing to worry about. Now, when we go to this river, we say a pasuk, Yashuv Yerachamenu v'gaimer v'tzashlich v'gaimer, that he'll show mercy to us, etc., and that he'll cast away, that we should cast away, referring to our averas. And in fact, that word v'tashlich is the name of what we call the ceremony where we go to the water, tashlich, casting away. V'tayv sheyeh mechutz l'ir, it's good if this is outside the city. Now, when do we do this? We should go on the first day of Rosh Hashanah. Now, some of you might know that when the first day is Shabbos, we move it to the second day because we're afraid about carrying Siddur, Machzurim, whatever it is outside, if there's no Eruv. But the Rebbe points out actually that from the Alter Rebbe, it appears that really the original custom is to do it on the first day regardless, and at some point later in history, it appears that This was made to be second day if the first day is on Shabbos, but it doesn't look like it's the intention originally of the Alter Rebbe. And when do we do it? Achar mincha. We do this after mincha. Koydem shkes hachama, before it gets dark out, before sunset. V'loymar pasuk. We also say the pasuk mi kel kamaycha v'goymer. We say a pasuk from Sefer Micha, and we actually say the two pasukim after it also. And this pasuk has in it 13 attributes of mercy, which correspond to the 13 attributes, the Yid Gimel Midas Harachamim, that are in Sefer Shmos. And then obviously, if you look in the Machzor, for Tashrik, there's a whole bunch of other things we say also. There's Yiratzayin, there's more Tehillim, etc. Now, Ches, final halacha, it's customary not to sleep at all during the day of Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because we don't want our mazel to sleep. Mazel refers to the fourth of the highest level of our soul, right? We have 5 levels of our soul, Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. And the mazel is also known as the Chaya, is the part that tethers our soul as it is here within our body to as it is up above. And so we certainly don't want that high special level of our soul to be sleeping. So therefore we don't sleep. Now, just in case you think, okay, so I'm not going to sleep, but I'll sit with my feet up and I'll shmooze. No. The Alter Rebbe says, Hayoshev uvato, someone who's sitting and, muvato, just wasting his time, harei zek hiyash, and this is just like sleeping. So, no, you got to be busy. So what should you be doing? Tehillim. Once you're done with davening, it's all about the Tehillim. And the Rebbe emphasized how special it is that every single moment on Rosh Hashanah should be spent saying Tehillim. Not just because we don't want to be, quote, sleeping, but because the Tehillim has such an incredible effect on Rosh Hashanah especially. Now there are those who say that it's okay to sleep after noon, after midday, and that's the opinion of the Arizal as it's brought down. But I'll add that it's our custom, again, not to sleep, because who has time to sleep? When you're busy saying Tehillim, there's no time really to sleep. So that's the end of the Siman. Just to review, we spoke about different foods you should eat: leeks, beets, dates, squash, fenugreek, rimonim, pomegranates, fish, succulent meats, etc. We talked about how you should dip the apple in honey, and the order of it is that we do kiddush hamaitzi, then you do the apple dipped in honey, and the order that we do it is you say the bracha, then you say the hiratza, and then you eat the apple in honey. We have a fish's head, and it's also customary to have carrots because merin means to increase. I also just want to add that all this is only on the first night of Rosh Hashanah, not on the second night of Rosh Hashanah. We also spoke about avoiding certain foods. We avoid nuts, such as walnuts and hazelnuts, because it makes phlegm and it increases mucus. We also said we're avoiding bitter foods like vinegar, because we want to have a sweet year, not a bitter year. And then we mentioned 2 other minhagim. One is tashlich, going to the river on the first day, or nowadays if the first day is a Shabbos, the second day. And finally, that we're not allowed to sleep during the day of Rosh Hashanah because we don't want our mazel to sleep. And instead, as Rabbi points out, we should be saying Tehillim.